Sami Al-Arian, how does it feel to have left the United States, to have been deported to where you are right now in Turkey?
It feels like I'm free, finally really feeling freedom for the first time in 12 years. I don't have to watch over my back or over my head or think that someone is trying to monitor you or get you. So it feels like you're free.
And this whole period that you've been under essentially house arrest, could you talk about that experience as well?
I mean, it's much better than prison, of course, but you're under house arrest. So basically, you're confined to your living environment. And although there were no restrictions other than that you can't leave the house, you still know that you're being monitored all over you. So it's not really total freedom. And unfortunately, after 9/11, many Americans feel that they live in surveillance and police state, and that's a very discomforting feeling.
Why did you choose to move to Turkey, Sami Al-Arian?
Well, I actually applied to many countries, some in Latin America, some in the Middle East, and Turkey. And I have friends who actually talked to the Turkish authorities, and they immediately made the decision to accept me. So it's a tribute to them and to their thinking of that they value people who fight for freedom or have been dealt with unjustly, and I'm very grateful for that.
We're also joined by Layla Al-Arian, your daughter. Layla, what's the most important thing for Americans to understand about your father's case and the injustices that occurred here?
I think what's really important to take note of is the fact that when my father was arrested nearly 12 years ago in on February 20th, 2003, John Ashcroft went on national television and made pretty extraordinary claims about who my father is, completely distorting and outright lying about my father, calling him a terrorist on national television. And of course, years later, none of that has borne true. My father was acquitted by 12 ordinary jurors in Florida. He said from the very beginning, this is a political case. And I think what people should take away from what has been a nightmare for our family is the fact that in the United States of America, there's no room for political prisoners. There's no room for politically motivated prosecutions. And, you know, my father was vindicated, even if he did have to eventually leave the country. I think when we look back at this case in history, we'll see that, you know, it's really a shameful part of our history, and, you know, it won't be something that anyone will look at with any kind of pride. So I hope we learn the lessons from this case.
And Layla, the impact on you and the other members of your family, the many years of this ordeal?
Of course, it's impacted us personally. My sister, the youngest sibling, was 9 years old when all of this began. She's now about to graduate college, so you can just see how long this ordeal has lasted for us. You know, it's been, in many ways, pretty destabilizing, feeling that we've been, not feeling, knowing actually that we've been under surveillance even as children. So when we were going over, you know, when my father was preparing for his trial and his attorneys, we learned that, in fact, all of our phone calls were recorded, even as children. We had the opportunity to even listen to some of the phone calls between us and our friends when we were in grade school. It's something that's pretty psychologically jarring and traumatizing. So I think really feeling that every aspect of your life is under surveillance by the government simply because my father was an outspoken Palestinian advocate is something that I'll never truly get over. But at the same time, there's been a lot of positive things that have come out of this case. A lot of the relationships we formed with many supporters, many activists who've really, you know, shown a tremendous courage in standing up for my father and his rights, and that's what we'll really remember more than anything else.
Sami, if you could talk from your own perspective about what happened to you. I played that clip from 2002 when I interviewed you at a big peace rally that you were addressing here in New York. You would soon be arrested. Your case factored into a Senate race in Florida. Talk about your journey.
It's really a story of what happened after 9/11. After 9/11, for whatever reason, the forces of intolerance, exclusionary politics, and hegemony really took center stage, where rational people were no longer able to advance any kind of dialogue or rationality in their dealings. So what you have here is people who pressured the government just to take retaliatory action against any activist. And if they had the opportunity to do that, they just went for it. For instance, my case was celebrated as being the first case after the Patriot Act, meaning, they said that the intelligence people did not speak to the prosecutions, and therefore the government to actually prosecute criminals. They didn't know anything about my activities. And that was patently false. Because during my discovery, I saw an earlier version of the indictment back in 2000, when we were very active politically, and my brother-in-law was in immigration court. They really wanted to indict me and stop the activity that we're doing. But somehow the Janet Reno Department of Justice refused to prosecute that case. And it was every overact that they said the prosecution didn't know from the intelligence people was there up to 2000. So that was patently false. And it was so political case that, all legal standards were just ignored. My speedy trial, I was denied speedy trial. The judge asked me in April of 2003 if I'm going to waive my speedy trial. When I said no, that meant that they had to try me within 70 days. The government immediately objected and said they were not ready. And if they were not ready to try the case, why did they indict? So if you go back and see the political nature of the case, when USF was in hot water because they wanted to terminate my employment, and they couldn't do it because of the pressure that was coming from all over the place, we found, for instance, that the president of USF went to the U.S. attorney in public, asking him to investigate. And at the end of the meeting, the U.S. attorney announces in February of 2002 the impaneling of grand jury. Now, grand juries are supposed to be in secret. And here we have the university president going to the government, asking them to bail her out. And at the end of the meeting, they announce the impaneling of grand jury. And then nothing happens. And I saw a discovery, for instance, when the government wanted to settle, when the university wanted to settle with me, and they offered me almost $1 million to resign, Board of Trustees chairman objected because he had been calling me, all kind of names up to that point. And he was the governor's appointee, Jeb Bush's appointee. So he goes to Jeb Bush, basically, and we had that information from their lawyer. And he asks to bail him out. And then somehow, instead of offering me a settlement, they sued me in court in order to fire me. It was a delaying tactic. And I could see during my discovery how the speed up of the grand jury went in August, September, October, and so on, until the indictment came back in February. And then we saw, that during the superseding indictment, when they indicted earlier in 2003, they had 17 counts against me. But they knew that half of these counts, the statute of limitation has run out. And the judge kept telling me when are you going to supersede. But they didn't want to supersede with less counts. So they added more counts on some transactions that took place in Chicago that I had no knowledge of, and they knew that I had no knowledge of it. And when we went to trial, they produced zero evidence of that. And then the person who was actually on the phone calls, on transactions, on the bank account, on everything that had to deal with Chicago was still acquitted, and I wasn't, because the two jurors couldn't bring themselves to acquit in all counts. So from start to finish, it was a political case, unfortunately, that took a very ugly turn. And thankfully, we had great jurors who could see through that, and they would not, at the end, go along and support the government's case.